Section 1. A Nation at a Crossroads. Welcome to Global Glimpse. Today we turn our focus to a story that has captured global attention, a narrative of profound change in one of Europe's most historically welcoming nations. For generations, the very name Sweden was synonymous with sanctuary, a beacon of humanitarianism built on open-door policies and a generous approach to asylum. This identity was forged in the post-war era and solidified through the 1970s, as the nation positioned itself as a moral superpower, welcoming those fleeing conflict and persecution from around the globe. This long-standing tradition created a uniquely diverse and multicultural society, weaving new threads into the nation's social fabric. However, the immense pressures of large-scale migration, particularly following the European migrant crisis of 2015, have strained public services and ignited a fierce national debate. The once unquestioned consensus on immigration began to fracture, leading to a fundamental reassessment of what it means to be Swedish. This isn't just a minor policy adjustment. It's a deep, structural shift in how the nation views its borders, its economy, and its very identity. The political landscape has been redrawn. Following the 2022 general election, a new center-right government, backed by the nationalist Sweden Democrats, came to power with a clear mandate: to enact the strictest immigration laws in the European Union. This marked a pivotal moment, signaling the end of an era. The numbers tell a stark story of this transformation. In 2024, Sweden recorded its lowest number of asylum applications in over 2 decades, a direct consequence of the new government's policies. Specifically, just 9,634 preliminary applications were lodged. That's a fall of 23% from the previous year, and a staggering 94% drop from the peak of the 2015 crisis. Even more telling, for the first time in over half a century, Sweden experienced net emigration. This means more people, including both foreign-born and native Swedes, left the country than arrived. This dramatic turnaround did not happen by accident. These statistics represent a deliberate policy direction with far-reaching consequences. The Swedish government is explicitly carrying out what it calls a paradigm shift in migration policy. The core of this shift is a strategic pivot, moving away from an asylum and humanitarian-based system toward a model that prioritizes high-skilled labor immigration. The goal is to attract talent that directly addresses Sweden's economic needs, while significantly reducing the number of asylum seekers. From stricter work permit requirements and the elimination of the track change system to new financial incentives for voluntary repatriation, the government has deployed a multi-pronged strategy to reshape migration flows. In this documentary, we will dissect this new playbook. Our aim is to provide a comprehensive, evidence-based understanding of what is happening in Sweden, why it is happening now, and what lessons, both intended and unintended, can be drawn for other nations grappling with the complex and often divisive challenges of modern migration. The Playbook for Change. At the heart of Sweden's new direction is not a single law, but a carefully constructed playbook of legislative and administrative measures. This represents a fundamental paradigm shift, moving away from a volume-based approach to immigration towards a more selective, value-based system. The goal is to create a framework that is both stricter and more predictable. Let's dissect the 3 central pillars of this new architecture. The first, and perhaps most impactful change, is the significantly higher salary threshold for work permits. Starting in June 2025, foreign workers from outside the EU must earn at least 100% of Sweden's median salary to qualify. This is a substantial increase from the previous requirement of just 80%. In concrete terms, this means a required monthly income of around 34,200 Swedish kroner, a figure that will be indexed and adjusted annually to keep pace with the national economy. This isn't just about the number. The policy introduces a heavier burden of proof on employers. They will face more rigorous compliance checks to ensure the offered salary is genuine and that the position couldn't be filled by an existing resident of Sweden or the European Economic Area. Employers will also be legally required to report any changes to an employee's terms of employment to the Swedish Migration Agency, a measure designed to prevent post-approval salary reductions. The stated intention is clear: to sharpen the focus on attracting higher-skilled, in-demand professionals who can contribute immediately to Sweden's advanced economy, while making it significantly more difficult for lower-wage labor to enter the country. The government argues this will protect domestic wages and ensure that labor migration genuinely fills critical skill gaps. The second pillar is the complete elimination of the so-called track change system, or Spårbyte, effective April 2025. This is a critical structural reform designed to create clearer, separate pathways for asylum and labor migration. For years, this provision allowed individuals whose asylum applications were rejected to remain in Sweden and convert their case into a work permit application, provided they secured a job offer. The government now views this as a loophole that undermined the integrity of the asylum process and incentivized prolonging legal battles. Its removal establishes a much starker reality. Under the new rules, a final rejection of an asylum claim will, in the vast majority of cases, lead directly to a requirement to leave the country. The option to switch tracks from within Sweden will be gone. The third pillar introduces a powerful incentive for voluntary departure, shifting the focus from forced removals to encouraged returns. Starting in 2026, a new repatriation program will offer substantial financial grants to eligible individuals and families who choose to return to their home countries. An individual could receive up to 350,000 SEK, while a family could be granted as much as 600,000 SEK. This policy is aimed at those who have not successfully integrated into Swedish society or who simply wish to rebuild their lives elsewhere. Eligibility will likely be tied to factors like the length of time spent in Sweden and the status of their residency. To safeguard against fraud, the funds are expected to be dispersed in stages, with some payments potentially linked to verification of their resettlement in their home country. Together, these three policies, demanding higher salaries, closing the track change pathway, and offering generous repatriation grants, form the foundational pillars of Sweden's new, more restrictive migration architecture. Each is a significant change on its own, but in combination, they signal one of the most profound shifts in Swedish immigration policy in a generation. To truly grasp the scale of Sweden's policy shift, we must first look at the numbers, which tell a story of profound transformation. The journey from Europe's most welcoming haven to one of its most restrictive is written in data. Let's rewind to 2015, a year that reshaped European migration. At the height of the Syrian refugee crisis, Sweden received over 163,000 asylum applications, the highest per capita in the entire European Union. This influx tested the limits of the country's infrastructure and social services, setting the stage for the political recalibration to come. Fast forward to today, and the contrast is staggering. In 2024, the country saw a historic drop in asylum applications. According to the Swedish Migration Agency, only 9,634 preliminary applications were submitted in 2024. This isn't just a minor dip, it represents a 42% drop from 2022 and a monumental 94% decrease from the peak in 2015. This figure places Sweden far below the EU average for asylum intake, a complete reversal of its position less than a decade ago. The message being sent to the world is clear and quantifiable. Sweden's doors, once wide open, are now deliberately being closed. The decline in applications is mirrored by an even steeper fall in approvals. In 2024, Sweden granted only about 6,250 asylum-related residence permits. To put that into perspective, it's the lowest number of asylum permits granted in a single year since 1985. This 40-year low is not an accident. It is the direct, intended consequence of the new legislative framework. It underscores the magnitude of the shift, from one of Europe's most accessible systems to one of its more restrictive. But behind these stark statistics lie countless human stories, complex dilemmas, and lives hanging in the balance. The end of the track change system, for instance, has had a direct and severe impact on immigrants. A composite profile representing many in this situation. A young people who fled instability in their home countries. They arrived in Sweden with hope. They dedicated themselves to integration, learning Swedish to a proficient level, and securing a full-time job as skilled workers. Under the old rules, their employment and integration efforts provided a clear, alternative path to a work permit, even if their initial asylum claim was denied. It was a system that rewarded integration and economic contribution. Now that pathway is gone. With their asylum claim rejected under the new, stricter criteria, they face a stark, binary choice. Return to a country they no longer know, or remain in Sweden without legal status, unable to work, and living in the shadows. Their skills, their language ability, and their contributions to the Swedish economy are no longer part of the equation for residency. For those who arrived more recently, the choices are just as difficult. Consider a single mother with 2 young children, another illustrative profile. Having fled conflict, she finds herself in a modest but safe apartment in a Swedish suburb. The government's new repatriation program presents her with a powerful lure, an offer of $34,000 to voluntarily return to her home country. For someone with limited financial means, this sum represents a significant, almost life-changing amount of money. However, the decision is far from simple. Her children were born in Sweden. They speak Swedish fluently, attend a local school, and have built their entire social world here. They sing Swedish songs, celebrate Swedish holidays, and see this country as their only home. The decision is a heart-wrenching choice between financial security and her children's future. Accepting the money means uprooting them from the only life they've ever known and taking them to a country they have never seen, where their safety and opportunities are uncertain. The ripple effects of these policies extend far beyond individual lives, touching every corner of Swedish society. On one hand, proponents argue that the immediate impact is a necessary relief on public services. With asylum applications at a historic low, municipalities and local governments may finally have the breathing room to manage budgets for schools, healthcare, and housing more effectively after years of strain. This, they claim, ensures the long-term sustainability of the welfare state for all residents. But the economic consequences are complex and double-edged. The new, stricter salary requirements for work permits, set at the median national wage, could inadvertently create significant labor shortages. Industries that have historically relied on immigrant labor, such as elderly care, hospitality, and agriculture, are raising alarms. Employer associations warn that finding native-born Swedes to fill these demanding, often lower-paying roles is a persistent challenge. The result could be a paradox, a shrinking immigrant workforce leading to reduced services for the Swedish population, particularly the elderly, and higher costs for businesses. Politically, the government's firm stance has successfully consolidated its base and decisively shifted the national discourse to the right on issues of migration and integration. The paradigm shift has become a defining feature of the current political landscape. This shift forces a national introspection. For decades, Sweden's identity was deeply intertwined with its role as a humanitarian superpower and a beacon of multiculturalism. This image was a source of national pride and international soft power. Now, that very identity is being fundamentally challenged and redefined. The question facing the nation is no longer just about managing numbers, but about what kind of country Sweden wants to be in the 21st century. Is it a pragmatic nation prioritizing economic stability and social cohesion through stricter controls? Or is it a country that risks losing a part of its soul? The answer is being written right now, in policy documents, in parliamentary debates, and in the quiet, difficult decisions being made by the immigrants. The core challenge for Sweden lies in balancing control, cost, and compassion. The new policies have demonstrated a clear ability to achieve control over migration flows. However, this pursuit of control comes with significant trade-offs. Critics say this is a retreat from international commitments and moral responsibility. The test is whether Sweden finds a stable equilibrium, balancing pragmatic goals with enduring human values. In conclusion, Sweden has engineered one of the most rapid shifts in modern migration policy. The results are undeniable. The government's playbook included the closure of the track change pathway, an increase in salary requirements, and a voluntary repatriation program. From Sweden's experience, several clear lessons emerge. The first is the power of aligning incentives. The second is the importance of clear communication. However, a third crucial lesson lies in the need to constantly monitor and mitigate unintended consequences, from labor shortages to the human cost. As Sweden moves forward, its journey will continue to be a focal point for global debate. The world will be watching to see if Sweden can maintain this new equilibrium. The story of Sweden's immigration fix is far from over. In many ways, it has only just begun.